Good morning, and it's Lilia here from Heal Scotland. And today I've got a fellow Scot with me, Gary Ferguson, who is the creator of this wonderful combat journal. And we're going to talk about it and how it can help you, how it got created, and also the fact that Gary is going to be at our festivals, our wild medicine festivals. And this really is wild medicine. Gary, thanks so much for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Lilia. Yeah, thank you for having me. Doing little new things like these lives are always something to push yourself outside your comfort zone, so I'm always happy.
It's because I've been on tour with the Goddess Gathering and usually having between 4 and 5 guest presenters from each city. And, a lot of people have never done stuff like this before, but once you start chatting, it's like, it's not,
Exactly,
you
it's
forget.
just a conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, can you explain briefly, Gary, about your background and how this work of art came to be created through you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so for those who don't know me, like I say, my name's Gary Ferguson, from Tarbert and Lochfine. And yeah, so I left Navy when I was really young, went to join the Navy, spent 4 years in the Navy, and then left to pursue a career as a deep sea saturation diver. But during that whole time, I suffered from like crippling anxiety, to the point where it sort of started to take more control over my life than I quite liked and affect those around me. So I started off initially just writing my own journal, and that was actually recommended from a friend, our past partner actually, and I structured it in probably what the most simple form of combat journal is, and really that's engaging in expressive writing. And I'll talk a little bit about that later with the two effective methods of journaling. But yeah, so I really practiced it on myself first, seeing massive changes with myself super fast. And because I can't really accept changes happening without understanding why, I think as a kid I probably asked why quite a lot, or maybe too much. And again, modern society, we're not actually allowed to ask why anymore. We just need to accept things. But I was a massive fan of asking why, and again why these changes were happening within me. And I just went down a massive wormhole of positive psychology, positive psychotherapy. And then I started to speak to psychologists from all around the world and asking them what they thought about these exercises, why we weren't using them more widely. And about 5 years later, sort of, I decided to create my own and print and publish my own. So mainly that is what Combat Journal is it's a series of positive psychotherapy exercises, very similar to like CBT. And they allow you to sort of talk to your own inner monologue, understand yourself a lot better and a more deeper level, and kind of take you on a journey of self-discovery and growth, really. So yeah, so that in a short nutshell is what Combat Journal is.
Yeah, and I mean, I know there's a ton of research went into this, and obviously, what I liked is when you started writing, you started to see changes super fast. Now we're all looking for that, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing that I love about this is because if you just give somebody a blank journal, and
It's very intimidating.
yeah, exactly. What do you write and does it matter? And, I think most of us, especially with the Western minds, I personally like to be guided through meditation. If I'm not, I'm away thinking all sorts
Yeah,
of other things, despite being on this journey for decades. So I think having real clear guidance, it
yeah.
just makes it, I think, some people, I think I'll always like guidance
Of course.
to keep me there. But I think that's what's really extra special about yours is that, and you can go over it as many times as you want, because I think if we take it back to healing, which is what I'm always banging on about, and you healed your own anxiety, which is a huge issue, particularly for a lot of teenagers nowadays. I think if we have some kind of framework that we can just go, maybe you can't see a therapist, you have time, you don't have money or whatever, maybe you're in a diving bell like you were the last time I spoke to you.
Yeah.
That was so funny, your message. I was like, he's either sucking balloons.
Which is quite funny, actually. I done a presentation at a UK diving medical conference, just kind of linking the stressors of being a saturation diver and how that links to growing your resilience and developing yourself. And firstly, I was meant to be down in London presenting this live, but work called and I had to shoot off. So thankfully, obviously, with modern technology, we just pre-recorded it. However, he asked me if sort of time and internet connection allowed, would he be able to patch me in for a live Q&A? And that was the first time. And for people that might not understand, as a deep sea saturation diver, you breathe heliox, so a mixture of helium and oxygen. So it's as if, like Lilia was saying, you're sucking on a helium balloon, but I speak like that for a full month. So a lot of these doctors actually had never understood that helium voice or what it sounded like. So it actually ended up being a much more effective presentation because they listened to this video and then patched me in for a live Q&A, and I just got an uproar of laughter in the beginning when I started speaking. So it was quite funny.
I was just amazed that you could communicate from there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people think that we're actually living at the bottom of the sea, but we're actually held in a container, which is actually on the ship. So we sort of eat what everyone else eats on board. We just tick a menu and they send it through a pressurized hatch. We've still got Wi-Fi. We can use iPads and laptops if you want to take them in. But
yeah, well, that's a bit of a relief if you're going to be there for a bit of time, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a great time to. I love that time to sit and read, and I'd done a lot of my research when I was in the chamber and trying out these exercises, because I could do a fixed month where I've got no distractions, and I work on these exercises, and I sort of, again, working with them and speaking to these different psychologists. I think at one point I think I was speaking to about 20 different psychologists, just all through LinkedIn from all around the world, and yeah, a lot of them were fantastic actually. They gave me such useful information.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's what the internet's allowed us to do, to meet people that you would never normally have met. We're the same on this tour. We're in Glasgow and Edinburgh, which is pretty easy for me because I've got a good network there, but then go to Dundee today, tomorrow Aberdeen, and then in 2 weeks Inverness. The internet, Facebook, Insta allows you to connect with like-minded souls everywhere. Exactly. And I think sharing information freely at this time is so important because so many people are needing help. And so many teenagers are suffering from anxiety, social anxiety, don't want to go out. And it's, and also, as we know, like, I think the thing about writing is, even if you're not a great writer, it doesn't, it doesn't matter. It's that kind of expression almost that flows through the heart to the arm, isn't it? And you can just it's a form of letting go, really.
It is, and that's pretty much the definition of expressive writing. It's emotional and expressive writing without needing to be a good writer, without needing to be a great speller or a great punctuator. It just allows you to just free flow and just get what's inside out on a paper, regardless of what that is.
And I think, math was always my subject. My dad was a mathematician, and it was always very like, well, there's an answer, a finite answer to that equation or whatever it is you're trying to solve. Whereas writing is a bit like art. It's just like, is it good? Is it rubbish?
Expressive, yeah.
And it's really, it's a bit like singing. It doesn't really, it's using your voice rather than using it to entertain other people. It's a form of getting things through and out the body.
And that's kind of what I found as well, is this whole process was all about me finding my voice, because growing up with terrible anxieties and being a not very confident person, being quite shy, again from a small village, I never really found my voice very much. So that's pretty much what this journey's been about for me, is getting over these hurdles, anxieties, self-confidence, and finding my voice to express through my journal or doing these lives, which is great, really. And that's what I've always said as well, despite the fact that if Combat Journal eventually does take me into my main job role or not, I've just thoroughly enjoyed the journey, because it's grown me in so many ways and allowed me to have conversations with wonderful people. I've been working with Deborah, or the Butterfly Skin Charity, and when you're speaking to kids that's grew up with a degenerative disease like butterfly skin, it's horrific to hear, but they're super positive still, and they're looking at you as if providing assistance for them, which is, it just blows my mind. It's the pinch me sort of moments as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, everybody that I've been speaking to for the goddess gatherings, and you're actually the first one that we're focusing on the festivals now
Mm-hmm.
to introduce our social network to the people that are going to be at the festivals, spreading the word about what they bring. Because, from a Heal Scotland perspective, it's about educate, inspire, support. But you cannot, and everybody we're talking to has come through their own healing journey and found a way to make themselves feel better and really wants to share that. And very often we're looking for, somebody with 6 PhDs in a lab working out the solutions for us. And here we are as humans doing very simple things like using the voice, writing, letting go, breathing. It's so simple. It's almost like trips us up to think it can't be as simple as that.
Exactly. And I think the amazing thing about these events and the events that you've been putting on for a while now is the fact that, like you say, it brings these people together, and especially with sort of research from what I've found, and especially more so angled at guys, is that I think we are desperate to talk and desperate to share our emotions and have that connectivity, but we've always got this inner blockage. And I think that when you put on these events and you bring all these people together and everyone's sharing openly and nobody's got an ego and everyone's accepting their own accountability, is the fact that it encourages other people to share and other people to tell their story, because everyone's got a story, and they're never the same as anyone else, and it's all about sharing and talking, and that's
Yeah.
ultimately growing everyone.
And, and it's admitting that you're vulnerable and that you were suffering and you were in pain and you were embarrassed or shy or whatever word it was you were, or maybe, if it's a more physical thing, then other people listening can go, oh, right, that gives me permission to talk about that. And particularly last week in Dundee, it was so amazing to listen to the female presenters just be absolutely open and honest about what had happened in the past, which was sometimes is really emotional to listen to, because God, we treat each other really badly sometimes. And the big thing is we don't even realise we're doing it. I know that I was totally ignorant. You didn't realise, you're ridiculing somebody, how you were making them feel. Because obviously a big part of our sense of humour and in a family of 6 is ripping the piss out of each other.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we communicated.
And I mean, that's kind of, again, one of the reasons that got me into going down this journey as well, is the fact that since a very young age, I've sort of submerged myself within that male masculine energy of job roles where, the natural default setting is to take the piss out of each other, and whether it's in the Navy or whether it's in the offshore world, it's all kind of the same. And again, like I just touched on previous, the fact that we do treat each other in that way, but deep down we're waiting for somebody else to initiate that conversation to then go on a deeper level to say, do you know what, I'm actually not having a very good day. And to accept that and to just say those words is super powerful as well, because like you say, in any 12-step program, the first step is always acceptance. So when you initiate these conversations, and it almost opens the door for them to be accepted for who they are, vulnerabilities and all, weaknesses, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you talk a little bit about expressive writing and what would be the other kind of writing? Is there
Yeah, so the two types of, like I say, a lot of people just think that journaling is like same as writing in a diary, and even people that journals every day, and they process, they probably process and reflect on past events better than the average person who doesn't journal, but still they're missing a key element to that, and it's usually a bit more leaning towards the expressive writing. And it's just asking those questions that you're never really going to ask yourself. So the two types of journaling, the effective journaling that's in positive psychotherapy, is gratuity writing, which I'll start with first, which is probably the most misused method of journaling out there on all of these sort of mindfulness or mental health claim journals. And the reason why I say is it's the most misused is because a lot of these journals just ask you to either write one thing that you're grateful for today, or maybe they push it a little bit further and say write down 5 things that you're grateful for. And there is proof that it does a little bit of work. It sort of, it gives you a little bit of joy to write down why you're grateful for these or what you're grateful for, but it doesn't actually get the main core benefit of gratuity. And I think I've mentioned to you in the past that gratuity dates back as far as Julius Caesar. I mean, I remember that question that we that came out in the news quite a wee while ago, and it's how often do you think about the Roman Empire? And if you think about it, you know, one of the strongest empires in the world pretty much dominated the whole of Europe. And Julius Caesar, one of the most sort of effective leaders in the world, he was a massive fan of gratuity, and he got that benefit out of gratuity. And he realized, you know, despite the fact that he's conquered the world or Europe, he still put time aside to sit and think what he was grateful for. And to get the benefits out of gratuity, you have to dig a little bit deeper. You have to give the reasons why you're grateful. I'm grateful for my mum and dad, but why am I grateful for my mum and dad? They've given me great life. They've allowed me to try all different things, and you dig as deep and deep and deep. And that's when you go away from that and you feel that energy, that burning desire within yourself and that joy. So one of the exercises that I've got in the journal to lead into gratuity is a gratuity letter. So you choose somebody, an object, an item, whatever that you're grateful for, but you write a letter as if you're writing it to them or to that particular item or object. You never send it to them, but it's just the process of writing that letter, explaining the reasons why you're grateful. That's the benefit out of gratuity, and that's one of the most powerful journaling sort of processes. And then you've got expressive writing, which is the other form, and that's kind of what the heart of positive psychotherapy exercises is digging a little bit deeper. So it doesn't necessarily focus on past events or situations about what happened. It's more about how you felt about what happening. So it almost focuses on the emotional aspect of it, but takes away the fundamentals of what actually happened in the event, which is a really effective tool, because not often do we look at the emotional aspects of events or situations. You know, you don't go to a concert and come away from it and automatic reaction is, oh, they were great, you know, they were really good live, or they weren't so good live. But you don't really often sit and think, do you know what? Like, I liked the way the music made me feel. I liked the way I was just free and I was free spirited. I didn't have any worries. I wasn't thinking about meetings that I've got next week. I wasn't thinking about things that happened in the past. I was just really there, present in the moment. And it's very rare, you know, it's super simple to think about it, but it's very rare that we actually do sit and dwell on and sort of reflect and process these events on an emotional level. But it just, like I say, it just focuses on how we felt about what happened rather than the actual event itself. And that's really a simplified version of what expressive writing is. But it can be so effective. And like you say, it's just, that was really what ultimately changed me without me even knowing what expressive writing was. And it was just over and over talking about my emotions that evolved me and grew me as a person and allowed me more to talk about myself comfortably, and not get worried about what people thought.
Yeah, and it's a growth process, isn't it? When you can,
it is.
And I mean, I don't know if I was watching Andrew Huberman with David Goggins, and he actually was telling him when you do something you don't want to do. So let's take cold water as example. The brain actually expands. Part of the brain, I can't remember the name of the part, but and once you get used to it and you don't dread it, or you're not having to force your free will, the brain then readjusts to that new normal. So the body it's like we've got to grow. We have to put ourselves out that comfort zone. And I think most of us know that. And I think that's what we're realizing now. You know, there was, I always remember being in a bus in Nepal and this guy saying to me, well, if you're over 35, we wouldn't take you here because you'll never learn a new language. And I could feel myself going, I'll be right. Of course, it's not that you don't have the capacity. It's just that most people over 35 wouldn't do it, wouldn't even consider it, because why would you? If you've got loads of other things to do and you're raising kids and you've got a job, you know, but it's not that it's not possible. It's just
that's caused by societal boundaries. You know, people tell us 35. I mean, I turned 35 a few weeks ago, and I feel great. I've not felt as if I've known myself as much as I have when I entered my 30s. And I always say to people, friends that are entering their 30s and have that sort of social stigma about turning 30, and I say to them, listen, like, just embrace it, because I've I've been blossoming since I turned 30, and I'm still blossoming.
Well, I'm the same at 63. I'll be 64 this year. I'm like, what? And
Yeah.
this has definitely been the happiest time of my life. The most contented, let's say, much more at peace, and yeah, just able to navigate the waves a little bit better.
And just kind of just linking to what you said there about like these connections and allowing ourselves to sit with the uncomfortable and learning to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And it's a lot of the time it's because, the human brain loves to make connections, whether they're good connections or bad connections. We always look to make connections in everything we do. But the brain can be very solid. It can be a solid sort of mass. So once you've made these connections, it's very hard to break them. Why addictions are obviously so common. And when you engage in stuff like expressive writing or meditation or breath work, it sort of almost allows the brain to be a little bit more malleable, to sever those past connections, but remake others. So then once you allow that brain to go back into that harder state, you've made these connections. So like you say, it's a lot easier to dunk your cell in a cold pool and to push your cell in the boundaries, maybe dip your head under next time, because you think, well, I'm kind of used to this now. I've made these connections. It feels normal.
Yeah, you almost need to push it a little bit further to keep getting that feeling of, wow, I did that,
Yeah.
And
I think that's one thing that I've always been quite good at. And I would probably say that my mum gave me that mental resilience, despite the fact that I wasn't a confident person or anything would set off my anxieties. I was very resilient. So in everything that I've done, I've never had like fail or quit's never been part of my vocabulary, despite the fact that there's nothing wrong with failing. We have to fail at certain things to be able to grow. But if I tell myself that I'm going to take part in something, or last January I ran 101 miles, and I only trained for 3 weeks for it, but I never thought once, this is too much for me. This is a feat that I'm probably not able to do, or I've not trained for. I thought, you know what, it's just one foot in front of the other for 101 miles, and that was all it was.
Where was that? Where did you do that?
So I'd done the West Highland Way, plus a little bit extra.
Right.
So I'd done
How long did it take you?
21 hours non-stop, pretty much.
Out Scotland. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well done. That's amazing.
Yeah. And that was actually, to add another little bit of hardship to it, that was the week prior to attending an ayahuasca retreat. So for those who know a little bit about ayahuasca or know nothing about ayahuasca, it's a shamanic sort of tea that you drink and go on a bit of a spiritual journey. But it's a cleansing process. You sort of get rid of the sort of dark matters that's in your body, which for me was anxiety, and sort of see light to sort of new change. And but it's more than just the medicine that you sit with. It's more about the process. So with ayahuasca, if you do a proper retreat, you sort of for 2 to 3 weeks prior, you engage in what they call a dieta, which is more than just a diet. It's more of a way of living. So you cut out all the bad stuff in sort of life. A lot of social media limit that. But for your diet, you pretty much live as clean as possible. So you remove salts, peppers, anything with a spice, so like onions, garlic, chilies. So very plain, very sort of boring food. You're not allowed sort of a lot of red meats. You're not allowed anything sort of artificial, so sweeteners. So if I'm trying to perform an ultra marathon, you would imagine that you need a lot of sugars. I couldn't eat any sugars. My body was dying for sugar at the end, and I still couldn't have any. So it was that again was kind of the start of my retreat. It was the start of getting my head in the zone, sitting with my uncomfortable, and dealing with the fact that I've probably given myself a hard challenge here, and I've just made it a little bit more hard by not allowing any gels or
How was your
electrolytes.
journey? How was your journey then?
The journey in ayahuasca,
Uh-huh.
probably one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had in my life. So, like I say, it's a cleansing process. So it's a purgatory drug. So, which puts a lot of people off is the fact that you do vomit, and a lot of people sort of purge through the other end also. But for me, it was really gentle. Actually, it was. Do you remember the old cartoons that you used to see, and you would open your mouth and words would come out your mouth? So genuinely, that was what I seen when I was purging. I was seeing words, and those words were anxiety, and they were physically leaving my body. And I
Really?
woke up, the next day, and the way I always explained my anxiety to people when I started talking about it is, I kind of woke up in the morning with this dark cloud over my head, and that dark cloud stayed there. I could maybe do some coping mechanisms or journal, and it would fizzle out a little bit, but or you would have some alcohol or whatever, and they would fizzle out, but they were still very much there. It was still a cloud there. And after my first ayahuasca ceremony, I woke up that morning, and I was in the trees, and I was in the woodlands, and I was listening to the birds singing, and then I noticed the fact that it was a beautiful sunny day, and I couldn't see any clouds in sight, and I just sort of came to that realization that, oh, so this is what it feels like to live without anxiety, and it was just such a profound experience for me. And again, I continued to sort of test that, and even when I went down to the last year's event in Tarbert, the Heal Scotland event, like you said, when I stood up and done that talk, I think you said to me, how many of these have you been doing since the last Goddess Gathering event? And I said, oh, probably one or two. And you were like, oh, you're an old hand now, you're good at it. And I didn't prepare for that talk. I cuffed it all. And that was me sitting with the uncomfortable and testing these boundaries, because despite the fact that I wake up and I feel as if I've got no anxieties, I don't just accept that and go about my life thinking, oh, whoopee, I've done all this work. I constantly test these and push these boundaries, and we always have to grow, and we always have to learn from yesterday and be better than yesterday. So despite the fact that I do live without anxiety, and still over a year on, I've not experienced anxiety yet. I still love to push myself outside my comfort zone, and even doing things like this, and not when I message you to say, oh, I've never done a live before, like it's just it's always pushing yourself and pushing those boundaries.
Absolutely. But also, I mean, running 100 miles, 101 miles, and then doing an ayahuasca, that's hardcore. Because we know that when you do really intense endurance exercise like that, and it becomes a mind thing, as you said, you were just like that. One foot will go in front of the other, and that's it.
Yep.
But a lot of people would still not be able to do that. But it breaks the ego down, and very often when you get to that place where literally you've got to just hand everything over, because it's just that that's when you have these remarkable breakthroughs. So well done,
exactly. And that's what I think. That's what I kind of tried to, in a roundabout way, show people by doing this crazy long event that I only took 3 weeks to prepare for, is the fact that we're capable of unbelievable things, and mostly the human mind's capable of things we don't know of. And and a lot of people, like we're saying with these social boundaries, we also put these barriers in ourselves, and we use that word can't very often. I can't run a marathon, I can't run a 5K, and I say to people, it's even a marathon. A marathon, for me personally, in my level, I think a marathon's nothing. I could probably go and jog a marathon after this live. But so many people think, oh, I need to do a marathon within an allocated time. Well, you could spend a whole day doing a marathon if you wanted to. You could spend over a day. You could walk it. And that's the thing that most people, despite obviously, aside from people that's got injuries and ailments that stop them, but most people are capable of doing a marathon, but they just might not do it in the time that their brain wants them to. And that's, again, these boundaries that we put in ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, I mean, if you watch Society in the Snow, the new film about the Uruguayan, I mean,
the crash.
You watch that survival story. I don't know if you've seen Nando Parado and Roberto, the guys that hiked out. There's a really brilliant documentary on Channel 5, because there's 14 of these guys still alive, and they've got a documentary with them explaining it, and you're just like, my God, we were doing that 3-day water fast. I was like, watch the side of the show, and then even dare to talk about hunger.
Definitely.
It's crazy.
I actually seen a really good interview, and it might have just been on YouTube about it, and it was comparing the old film Alive about the other plane crash, and how that film just focused on the incident really, and it didn't really go into the hardships of being in that position. Like you say, we got the sense of those men starving, like going through the hardships of, you know, not knowing when your next meal is going to
Cold
be, the freezing
and the
cold. Yeah.
hunger, and the terrain was just snow.
Yeah.
And these guys came from the
Endless
beach,
snow. Never really seen snow before. Exactly.
and plus
Yeah.
all their pals getting killed. It's just like, you cannot even begin. And that's when you're just like, wow. And they were there for 10 weeks in one day. And you're like, there you go. Just
And
shows you.
that's this mental fortitude that really we're all, I mean, not extreme versions of mental fortitude, but that's what we're all really trying to instill in each other, is the fact that we might all end up in a really uncomfortable sort of barren situation, that we have to either step up and take action, not for everyone, we don't all need to be leaders, but take action in our own selves. And that just might be in the sense of accepting that I'm not going to die today, or, you know, and that's the extremes, or I'm not going to suffer this rain today. I'm not going to let that bring me down. I'm going to embrace this rain, or, you know,
It's me.
yeah, exactly. I'm
Anyway,
going to go out and
in rain. It's all right. When people are greeting for water, we're going to be fine.
well, it's trying to explain to a lot of people from down south that we don't pay for water, or we don't have a water bill every month, and they're like, "What?" I'm like, "It falls from the sky. We've
I
got
know.
abundance of it up here." Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, listen, so this year I was really hoping that you'd be able to we could get people actually writing
Yeah.
at festivals. Obviously, we need to decide. I'm doing a kind of come and meet. So, you know, like what really we want to do, again, from the Heal Scotland mission perspective, is we want to educate and show and inspire people about all the things that you can do to help yourselves, obviously. And so that if you ever need it, you know, it's a good idea to learn all these things when you're not in that extreme place. But, you know, even if you are finding things very, very difficult right now, this is something really simple that you can do.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be really good to have a workshop where we can actually get people started in the process.
Definitely. And I think it's really effective, the fact, and that's where kind of combat journal shows its effectiveness a lot more, is the fact that you can explain a little bit of the theories behind it, you can explain the story of how it's sort of healed me, but then once they understand that, they're much more sort of enthusiastic about trying these exercises, and they're so simple. The fact that, you know, all you need to bring is a pen and paper, and we can sit down and we can do 3 or 4 exercises, depending on obviously time allocations, and like you say, it empowers people to show that they don't need to do very much, and they can do all these things on their own. You know, you don't need to invest in crazy expensive therapies. You can just sit down with pen and paper and sort of heal yourself. And exactly what I done, you know, I'm a working example of that. So yeah, no, I'm looking forward to sort of doing a little bit more interactive exercises with everyone.
Do you have an online version of this?
I don't know. It's mainly, you know, I do have a PDF version which I send to obviously the printers and stuff, but for copyright reasons and stuff, I'm sort of always reluctant to share that.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I could probably model up a few PDFs and or printouts, or even take a couple of the exercises and print a few of them out so that we can hand out on the day or something.
Well, is the ideal is if people can just buy their journal from you and then
Start working through.
start working on it.
Yeah.
And if that's not, you know, if it's out with their budget, then we can look at that as well.
Definitely. Yeah, of course.
That anybody who really has a strong desire to try it gets the opportunity.
And that's the thing, you know, exactly what you said there. You know, we're enabling people to see that they can help themselves without, you know, taking on too much sort of burdens, because, you know, life's very expensive nowadays, and a lot of people sort of maybe can't afford to partake in a lot of these things. You know, you're paying to go to an event, and then you're like, oh, I maybe don't want to pay anymore for anything else. But yeah, we'll always find solutions, because I think it highlights that sort of the people that do come to your events, they're not all about profit, and they are about helping people and realizing that we can help ourselves, and it's just sort of sparking that first step, really.
Yeah. And, you know, we had this conversation at the week. If anybody writes to me and says they cannot afford to come to one of the events, if the numbers allow, I will obviously, you know, we'll take a donation. And I want everybody to know that there's absolutely no way I want people excluded for financial reasons, but there's obviously a limit within, how
Definitely.
much we can do, because these events, I don't know if you heard this yet, but I've been offered a hotel in Skye.
Amazing. I actually think that, so I've got my marketer, which Mickey, which you met at
Yes.
the book launch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he is always talked about introducing me to this guy in Skye that's got a hotel, and I'm thinking that this is going to be him. So it'll be really quite a coincidence that if it is, and he's been looking for me to introduce, well, looking for him to introduce me to this guy for quite a while now. So yeah, it would be a great coincidence if it is him.
Yeah, well, John has offered me this. So I think we're going to have to raise maybe about 8 grand all in to have it for a couple of months, January and February, maybe a little bit of March. That's to be decided. But for an 8-bedroom hotel, I think that's a phenomenal opportunity. And
Amazing.
obviously, the land in Skye is off the scale incredible. So I just really feel it's just really a case of deciding, what that pop-up healing centre is going to look like. And I think something like the Combat Journal, and I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a while, could be a really integral part of a well-being plan. So it'd be really great for Heal Scotland to have some. You can come up with a good wee deal for me.
Yeah, and very much, and it's kind of similar to what I'm kind of doing at the minute with the men's mantra. David Miller. I don't know if you've came across him.
Yes,
So he focuses obviously solely on males, but he's running a 6-month program called Man Alive at the minute, or just about to start. And we talked about how effective journaling can be part of that whole process, because the thing is with these events, that we all go to these events and we get that energy of each other and all these different things that's going on, and we feel great, and we leave that event and we think, you know what, I feel amazing, I'm going to integrate all these healthy habits, but then they slip away because obviously you're not surrounded by these energetic people that's expressing themselves, and that's what's so powerful about Combat Journal, is the fact that you can take that energy and you can continue that every day or every other day by just sitting and writing in it. So yeah, for sure we can definitely do a little deal and hopefully get it in the hands of as much people as we can.
Because we were talking, about, I was talking to a family who very sadly my friend lost their daughter, and she's got 4 siblings. And just at the end of last year, she was only 23. And, I was saying, look, what could have helped you guys, making a horrendous situation any lighter or any easier, or any way that we could create something that would help. And I think, what can happen, especially if you're a big family, or you got a big, like we all have in Argyll, a big tight circle of friends that are like our family, is that everybody's experiencing different things at different times. So the journal you can just use to put things in there. That, maybe you don't want at this stage when you're in pain to say out loud. So it can be just a really nice private way to get things literally off your chest. I mean, that's one of the best things.
And that was exactly who I was. I wasn't that person that was willing to talk to people and say, I was like suffering in silence. It was more, I wasn't ever going to sort of go to a therapist. I didn't feel that I was ready to take that step. So the fact that I could speak to myself, which I've created like almost a little therapist in your pocket with Combat Journal, is the fact, well, a big pocket, is the fact that you are partaking in this practice on your own, and you don't need to talk to anyone, and you don't need to necessarily fully step into that vulnerability, but you're still practicing it from yourself. And like the same process with me, and I hope that a lot of other people go through the same journey, is the fact that once they unlock that door, their potentials are exponential. It's crazy.
I know, and the main thing is just encouraging people to just try it. It's like breath work. I was saying to somebody about, have you tried the breath work? They were saying, oh, I'm doing a wee bit of research. And I'm like, what? Just do it, for God's sake. Like, why are you waiting? So much suffering. And it's that open-mindedness to go, well, what the hell have I got to lose? Absolutely nothing. What is your website? What's the Combat Journal website?
It's combatjournal.com, combat-journal.com. So it's fairly easy to find, and again on socials, combat.journal. So
combat.journal. I'll just put it in the chat.
Mm.
Claire saying here, I love your honesty, Gary. Thanks for being so open.
Oh, thank you.
I knew I hadn't spelt that right. It's combat. My eyesight. I'm going to have to journal.com. Yeah. There we go. So yeah, so that's fantastic. Right. Well, you and I can discuss. Hopefully, you'll not get called away,
Yep.
and that we can. At Tarbert Festival this year, we'll have the tent, which will have all the kind of big stuff like, you know, yoga, tai chi, but all the stuff with it that you don't need chairs for. We'll just use the marquee for that. The sound bath, or, you know, big sound bath lying down, and then we're going to have the gather. And what I was thinking, that's a family area, because obviously you can have dogs and children there, and I know that that's important for some people. I don't know whether have you worked with teenagers at all with the journal?
So I was meant to be talking in a school in January. They all fell ill, and I had to postpone it. But yeah, we're actually I'm actually looking to develop a Combat Journal Junior for younger people. But with sort of teenagers and stuff, because it's, you know, teenagers are go through their own sort of boundaries and their own sort of worries about leaving school and everything else, is the fact that we found it like an untapped industry, is the fact that we could go around schools and sort of almost spread this awareness. So it's something that's in the works, to work with a lot more kids. Yeah.
So maybe we could do something, even just a chat on it for parents about the power of it, you know, at
Definitely.
the gather, because I want to have a really nice programme because I know that a lot of parents are struggling right now,
Yeah.
and worried about their teenagers. And, you know, I mean, being a teenager is never going to be easy, but we now understand so many ways that we can help that feeling that's inside, which creates all the thinking that's usually pretty unhelpful, and how we can change that simply and for free and reconnecting to nature. So
Definitely.
yeah, that would be great if we could do that as well. Anyway, that's fantastic. Thanks so much for your time, and I will talk to you soon. And did I send you the link for the form to fill in for the festival?
I'm not too sure. I'll have a wee look, but if you didn't, I'll do it. Yeah.
If I didn't send you them, let me know, and I will ping them over to you. And
I've got a feeling you did.
Okay, brilliant.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Great to see you, and thanks again.
And I'll see you soon. Yeah.